Warning: the following podcast contains graphic content that may be disturbing or triggering to some listeners. Discretion is advised. The Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast is available free of charge thanks to the support of Cracked Armor.
Their mission is to raise awareness for PTSD, TBI, and mental health to support those who struggle. By creating an army of warriors who represent the gear, their hope is that it will send a message to others that they are not alone.
Go to crackedarmor.com, say hi to Mark Long, read about the story, and find some research information about PTSD. And if you can, look good while supporting Cracked Armor by buying some gear.
(10-9). Did you say Papa Tango Sierra Delta? 10-4.
There's so much left to do, so many things I wanna say, and I say, don't make the change. If it rains every single day, I'll fight to blow it all away.
This is episode 24 of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. My name is Larry Payton, and I have been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress. Good morning, PTS! I know, I just have been wanting to do that, and it's a good morning. It's been a good week, and I really am looking forward to sharing with you the week that I've had. Primarily because I got out and spoke to some new people about mental health issues. Of course, operational stress injuries, post-traumatic stress, TBI, traumatic brain injuries, you name it, we talked about it. And I'm speaking about Chad Kennedy and his group with C2C for PTSD. And that is C as in SEA, C to C, like coast to coast for PTSD. Chad's been walking across the country. He's been doing it for a little while now. He just wants to get out and raise awareness to mental health issues, raise awareness to post-traumatic stress and operational stress injuries. So he's been walking through the provinces. This week, when he was leaving from the Halifax airport to head into town, I decided it was time to join him. It was great to get out there and meet Chad, as well as Lisa and Tim. Now, I mean, Tim's real name is Rick, but I screwed that up all day. I just kept calling him Tim. Like, I have a problem with names. I'm not going to lie. Like, I remember faces, but my memory of names is just gotten worse and worse since my diagnosis. It just sucks. So his name is Rick, but I'll probably be calling him Tim for the entire morning here, okay? Just stick with me. So, meet up with Chad, with Lisa, and with Tim, and we began the journey. And it was great. You know, I mean, Chad and I were just walking along the shoulder of Highway 102 from exit 6 all the way in. And we got to talk for several hours about several things. Each one of them, no matter what the topic, kept coming back to mental health and operational stress injuries. Yeah, we were about 3.5, 4 hours talking. It was awesome. It was really great to get his insight, to get his work ethic, to get his drive to make people more aware, and just to get out there and feel alive, really. We had cars going by, bumping horns at us, which was very cool. I mean, they were bumping horns at us in a positive way, not like, what the hell are you doing? It was a positive thing. And it was great, man. We walked, I think it was just under 17, 18 kilometers. Went from Halifax Airport, that's exit 6, until we hit all around Duke Street and Bedford Common. At that point, we jumped in the truck with Lisa and Tim, a.k.a. Rick, and drove over to Off Track Brewing and had a well-earned pint or two while sitting down and talking some more. While we were at Off Track, Sam the Shrink, you'll find her on Instagram under Sam the Shrink. Sam is a therapist, and she came out with her young son, a very young son, like 5 months old. Quinn, what a cool little dude. He loved my voice. He loved looking at me, and he loved being in my arms and really dropping a huge stinky deuce in his diaper. But listen, man, I felt connection because, I mean, if I'm going to crap in front of someone, I need to at least feel comfortable with him. And I'm really happy that Quinn and I were on that level, that he was good to just drop one right in my arms. Thanks, buddy. You were awesome. Great kid, actually. So it was cool. We sat down there, met with Sam the Shrink, and spoke some more with Chad, with Lisa, and with Tim/Rick. We also met another gentleman there named Steve, who shared some of his journey with us. And it was just cool. It was cool, man. It was cool to just talk openly about the struggles. And none of it was in a negative light. None of it was, fuck this, fuck that, I'm fucking sick of this, I hate that, I'm angry. It was much more positive. It was much more, yeah, we have this, we're upset about this, sure, but it's about trying to figure out how to live with it, as opposed to just going, yeah, I'm diagnosed and I'm, well, fucked. No, not at all. It was great. And so I encourage you, if you have not yet checked it out, or you are not following him on social media, look up C2C for PTSD. He's got merch for sale. You can support him there. Of course, donations for his journey across the country. You can also get out and join him to walk. I know next week he's heading to Prince Edward Island, and he is also, in a couple of weeks, I believe, heading over to Newfoundland, and he will end his journey when he walks into St. John's and meets with some very special people there. I'm not going to take that story away. I'm really happy that Chad shared with me who he's going to be meeting and why he's meeting these people when he gets into St. John's, but respect. And it's very touching. And I hope that it becomes a very pleasant, happy kind of a meet for everyone involved. So, yeah, that was great. That was fun. I really enjoyed it. I also got a call this week from a listener, Howard, who is from Prince Edward Island. You may have seen Howard on some of my posts. He's a retired staff sergeant with the RCMP who is now done again with post-traumatic stress. Howard he's a fantastic guy, man. He's a great guy. And it took him a little bit to be able to leave the island, especially doing so on his own on the motorcycle. But he did it. He made it. He's now in Halifax. We are going to be getting together today for lunch and maybe tomorrow for a meet with Chad and with Rob Truscott out at Hubbard's at the fire department. Regardless, I guess the point I'm just trying to make is, yeah, there's a lot of positive things that have been happening and people coming together and talking and spreading the word and just putting it out there. And it's all very, very good. It's very, very much needed. As I keep saying, it has to be normalized. But just getting out there, walking, talking, meeting up with people, having Howard come over, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. I mean, I'm struggling with the fact that I'm going to the World Police and Fire Games in Winnipeg in a week and a half. And that's going to be my first time away from my wife since, I'm not real sure how this is going to work out. I'm definitely anxious about it. I mean, I'm excited to go and meet people, but I'm anxious. And I think my lucky stars above, actually, that Patrick Gordon will be joining me. And if you may remember Patrick from previous episodes, Patrick did 3 service tours, 3 deployments over to Afghanistan. And he is now back and is operating a beautiful project called Operation Feed St. John, where he is trying to fill the bellies of impoverished children in St. John and area, as well as fill the hearts and souls of veterans and first responders that are just needing to get out there and help and do good and get their mind off their injuries. So I'm quite happy that Patrick will be joining me to give me a hand out there and have my 6. And I'm sure he knows that I'll have his as well. The last thing I want to say before I end off on this quick intro, my favorite instructor on Peloton, and for you, those of you who shake your head and go, Jesus, man, Peloton, listen, I love it. I absolutely love it. I never thought I would, but I friggin' love it. And it has made a huge change in my life in the sense that I've gotten back into exercise in the comfort of my own home, but doing live shows, being there with the instructors, makes me feel that I'm not alone. So it's kind of the best of three worlds for me. Yeah, exercise, stay home, not alone. One of the things I just want to share that comes from my favorite instructor, her name is Jen Sherman. She's pretty cool. She's in her early 50s, so certainly can understand where she comes from. She plays the kind of music that I play doing the rides. You know, she's very motivational, but she's also very just blunt and cool with herself. And I like that. Of course, I like that a lot. It reminds me of, well, my kind of people, of myself and pretty much everyone who's listening to this. We tend to be type A personalities that just put it out there, say it like it is, and are blunt and honest. Not mean, but just blunt and honest. One of the things that Jen says typically happens when you're getting close to the end of the ride and she requests you to do something difficult, whether it is jack up the resistance, get up out of the saddle and pedal your ass off, do some sprints, whatever it is that you're doing during that class. And she will look at you and she will just say, I know it sucks. I know you're tired. JFDI. And that's what you hear. JFDI. And so that's something that I want you to take with you this week. I want you, when you have to face some shitty shit, and I mean stuff like sometimes it's filling out VAC documents, sometimes it's opening that email that you know came from the organization, even though you're off duty trying to get healthy through your operational stress injuries. If it's some kind of other paperwork or task that's just been sitting there and haunting you, but you can't drum up that motivation to go get it, do it, remove it from your list. Remember, JFDI. Just fucking do it. Let's take a quick break.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you have experience with post-traumatic stress and would like to join me for an episode, please reach out to me. You can contact me via direct message on Instagram, PTSD_podcast, or you can send me an email at Papa Tango Sierra Delta Podcast @gmail.com. Cheers.
We are back from the break. Thank you very much for staying tuned to the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. On today's episode, we have Derrick May, who is a Canadian Armed Forces veteran. Derrick is coming from New Brunswick. How's it going, buddy?
Good, Larry. How are you?
Good, man. Good. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Let's start it off with please introduce yourself and tell us about your journey.
Roger that. My name is Derrick May. I'm a retired veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces. I served 15 years, 2 days with Royal Canadian Military Engineers as electrical generation systems technician. Retired in 2014, diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder complex. Prior to that, joining the forces, I grew up in St. John, New Brunswick, where I lived for 17 years until I joined the reserves at a high school, 31 Service Battalion, as a mobile support equipment operator or a trucker, just to get my feet wet in the forces to see what it was like. That was a means to an end. It was always something I wanted to do, was to join the forces to get away from St. John, New Brunswick. It was really the only options we had was, join the military or I guess live a life of crime. And I chose to join the forces. Typical childhood here in St. John, I guess child abuse is quite rampant here. I was first molested, I guess, when I was 3 by a babysitter. And then after that, from the ages of 8 till about 13 from a family friend. So me joining the forces was a way for me to escape some of the abuses that I had here. My home life was, I had my mom and dad at home, but they didn't really have the best tools to be parents or attentive of what I needed. It was kind of like, I'm the youngest of 3. They put a lot of effort in the first 2 boys. I was just kind of left to fend for myself. Basically, grew up at a pretty early age with those traumas that are happening to me. And yeah, I always wanted to join the forces. So I joined the Army at 17 as a trucker. This is great. I get out, I can make some money on my own and be self-sufficient. Did my trades training down in Aldershot, Nova Scotia, Kentville, my QL3. And then after that, we come back to the unit as a reservist. And you wait for your next tasking, which mine was the next summer back at Camp Aldershot. Now, my life was progressing pretty well at that time. I had recovered from the traumas from childhood and was doing fairly well and just wanted to get on with my life. And then in 2001, August, just before 9/11, I suffered a sexual assault at the hands of my my friends, the guys that I was sharing a room with. We had 16 guys in a room, and you're tasked out. We were base transport. We drove people around to different appointments and stuff like that. And we all congregated and lived in one room. And, you know, my tasking was from June until mid-August. And one night I went out to the bar and I came home. I left a little early than everybody else. And in the valley, if you've ever been there, it's quite hot in the summertime. So I like to sleep nude and with a sheet on. And I guess that sheet blew off in the middle of the night. And I had no idea because I was passed out drunk. And I woke up in the morning and there was a nudie magazine next to me, a condom wrapper, a condom, some Vaseline, right? And I woke up and I'm just like, what is going on? Like, what is this, right? So obviously someone was playing a prank, which I thought it was a prank at the time, and tried to shake it off. But the guys were like, hey man, how's your ass? How's your bumginity? You know, you got raped last night. Like, you're trying to piece these things together. You had no idea what was going on. So you're just getting bits and pieces of information. And as the story unfolded, I just had all these emotions come back, and anxiety and stress and, you know, anxiousness, and had no idea what I was feeling at the time, but it was just overwhelming and overpowering. And how could, you know, this happen? I'm a man. I'm 19 years old. I'm in the Canadian Armed Forces. I'm 6'2", 260 pounds. How could this fucking happen again? So I didn't know how to process it. Comes to find out later on through more bits and pieces of the story, people came in, members of the opposite sex, to take a gander of me when I was passed out drunk. The guys decided to stick a condom in my ass and take pictures on the old Polaroid disposable cameras that you could get down at Zeller's or whatever, and to really get me to play a prank. And, you know, I didn't really find that too fucking funny at the time, and really didn't know how to process it. So I bring it to the chain of command, and everybody viewed it the same way. Oh, it's a prank. You know, you got to get along with the guys. You have to settle at the lowest level possible. You know, I tried to get my revenge on these guys, but it paled in comparison to what I experienced. So never really had any retribution, and that really pissed me off. Some of these guys I had to go back to my unit with and see these guys all the time, and have people coming up and say, hey man, heard what happened to you. Like, yeah, it kind of sucks. Keep explaining to it. So after that tasking, I received another tasking letter to Gagetown to go work at the Trials and Evaluations Unit right after Aldershot. And I was up there supplying transport for the Royal Marine Commandos and the British Airborne guys as they were doing some sort of testing on some cool weapons. And 9/11 happened when I was out in the field, and that kind of like reinvigorated my love for the military. Even though I suffered this assault from my friends, I really loved being a part of the military, and I wanted, you know, to do my part. And that tasking ended, and I got home, and I still had those lingering feelings of, you know, being let down and being assaulted and stuff like that, and didn't really know how to process it. I was a fun-loving guy prior to this, got along with everybody, but that changed when I got home. And now I have money in the bank. and I have nothing to do because I wasn't working at the time, or part-time soldiers at the time. Spent my money drinking just to kind of ease the pain going out. And then I found out that I really like to fight. I had this body. I could impose my will on people. And it was an escape to go out and get in a fist fight. And I didn't care if I got beat up or if I beat people up. I just wanted to fight, and I didn't care. So within, me getting home, within that 6-week period, I wound up getting a lot of fights. I wound up getting stabbed. I wound up getting beat with a tire iron, like probably 20 or 30 times. Had my head split open from it, concussion, stuff like that. And then getting stabbed, that wasn't very pleasant experience either. Yeah, so it was kind of a life lesson there of like, okay, this is how I'm processing this trauma. And my dad is not really great at giving me advice, but he gave me some good advice that time. And he said, you're going to fucking kill somebody if you don't fucking stop, or somebody's going to kill you. Because that was the end. That's the only way this thing turned out. I was going to kill somebody, or somebody was going to kill me. So I kind of withdrew from society, but I still like to drink. So I'm like, I'm going to drink alone. And that's what I did. I kind of like started slowly isolating myself in 2001. After that, transferred to the regular force to become an electrical generation systems technician with the engineers. So waiting for that course to come. And then I move along with my career progression. I get tasked out for my 3's course out in Halifax. And now I'm in the barracks again. And I'm like, wow, okay, wait a minute. This is not comfortable. This is not great. We had our own rooms, but it was still a familiar feeling of something bad's going to happen.
Yep, absolutely.
I didn't really know how that prank at the time would affect me throughout my life and my career. And really, I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. Like, what did I do wrong? And just fucking hated myself. And realized that I needed some healthy activities to offset these negative feelings that I've been having. So I leaned into the gym. Like, I was a pretty fit guy, always went to the gym, but I ate like dirt. Like, I didn't eat well. Like, it was more of like, okay, I have to exercise so I can drink more type of situation.
Yeah.
And I can eat like garbage.
Yep. Sounds familiar to me.
Right?
Yep.
That's the standard operation procedure for dealing with trauma. And not really knowing. At this time, I'm like 24 years old, 22, I guess, at the time. I finished my trades training and still dealing with all this stuff. I get my posting message to Trenton. But while I was on my course, I found, the love of my life at the time, right? Like, met this girl 3 months later. I'm like, hey, you should move to Trenton with me. Bring your son along, and we can have this great life together. In hindsight, that was just me looking for normalcy and trying to have, something of a normal life. Like, you get a career, you get a wife, you get a family.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
I had no idea what it took to be a family man, because the standard for being a man that was set for me was you provide and you can do whatever else you want as long as you provide for your family. And that was a low bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You just provide for your family. You can be an asshole. You can drink. You can gamble. You can fuck around. But as long as you provide for your family, you're a good man. Well, that only carries you so far. And then it was like I was white knuckling it for a while. Then, you get in that speed wobble of like, okay, things are going to shit at home, but I still got everything going great at work. I can put on the smile. I can be that guy that they want me to be, right? I can, go be happy, joke around, and be a part of the crew, and then go home and be depressed and drink and do it all again. This vicious cycle. And then, it just starts building up at home. And then my personal life started really, really falling apart. Like, the police were called. I've been arrested multiple times just because, domestic situations, things get heated. And that really affects your career in the military. When the military police are called, then everybody knows your business.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, the secret that I've been trying to hold and trying to keep on the inside and keep away from everybody else is now coming out and it's seeping out. And it's slowly seeped out over time. Like, This was 2006. This was the first incident. And then, 2008 was another incident. And then we really didn't have time to repair our relationship, because when you're in the military, you're expected to go places. You have trades training to do. You have tours to do, right?
Yep.
I came back from my trades training, my journeyman's course, after 6 months with all the same problems I had before I left. And then I got attached, posted to a CFS alert for a tour of 6 months. So it just kind of prolonged things. Like, we were avoiding things. It just grew and festered. And at that point, it was just kind of like beyond repair, regardless, just it's out of control. I came back from alert, and then I was posted to the school in Gagetown as an instructor for 3 years. Things were not going well there. Arrested again, begged for a posting. They posted me to Quebec. So I don't speak a lick of French. And, me and my wife at the time weren't doing very well, but we managed to survive in Quebec because that's all we had was each other. It was like us against them. But I didn't realize how sick we were, how sick I was.
Yeah.
I leaned into my fitness again and just started like running in Quebec and going to the gym, and stopped drinking. When I first got to Quebec, I was drinking up to 30 beers a day. Like, I would come home at 3:00. I would put on the PlayStation to play some Madden, and I would just drink beer from the time I got home to the time I passed out, whatever that was. And I was just like coping that way. And I'd sleep on the floor in my living room because that's the only place I felt safe. I couldn't sleep in my bed anymore. I slept that way for 5 years. And I always told my kids it was because of my back, right? Like,
right.
How do you justify telling your kids that you don't feel safe?
Absolutely.
That's really what it was.
Yeah.
So I continue like with those coping mechanisms until I realized maybe there's something else to it. So I started leaning into the healthy stuff, like exercising again, eating right, running, and I felt great. I was like, okay, the booze is holding me back. I'm going to limit my booze. I'm going to really lean into being a good husband and a father, and really try to lean into healing and repairing my family. And I did that. I was quite successful. I wound up, stopped drinking like overnight, started running every day, 10K a day. And then I had to challenge myself. I went from 322 pounds to like 270 in 4 months, decided to run a half marathon.
Wow.
And I did it.
Jesus.
It was like 100, right? An hour, 53 minutes.
Damn.
A guy that didn't run at all. So now I'm a runner.
Wow.
I'm like, cool. I love that. And I was like, oh, I can do something. But as soon as I ran that marathon, I had this big empty feeling in my heart.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, now what?
Right.
Now what? So I'm like, okay, I got everything going on. I go and we finish our time in Quebec, and I get promoted to sergeant. And I get my own shop down in Greenwood. This is where I'm going to go. Finally, I'm at the pinnacle of my career for EGS Tech. I'm a sergeant. I have my own shop. I'm 29 years old, and I get to run things the way I want to run it. That's when things started to fall apart for me, because I didn't deal with my past traumas and stuff like that. When I got to Greenwood, I was pretty healthy. I was in shape. I was probably 295, like really jacked guy, really mean looking fella. No, I really love being in the military. I love being around my guys, but I always liked punching up because I had a real disdain for the chain of command, especially people that were incompetent.
Yep.
And I'm like, there's a set of parameters in the military. It's laid out in black and white. We're going to do it this way. There's no other way to do it. And I really bought into that. Little did I know, it's more fluid than I thought. It's not as rigid. It's like, they apply it the way they want to apply it when it benefits the system, right? So I'm like, oh, that was a hard lesson to learn. So I had this fellow in my shop, a young Tyrell. He had a problem with substances. And I wrote him up because that was my job. I knew him previously from my time at the engineer school. He was kind of messing up there. He's in my shop now. He seemed to be doing okay. He went to rehab and recovery and stuff like that. And then they just let him out on his own recognizance and like, hey, good luck, right? and no one was checking in on him. So me being with my trauma brain and healing myself at that time, I could recognize when people were starting to slip. So it was a slow descent for this fella. And then eventually I wound up writing him up 26 times, and I'd bring it to the chain of command. And they said, sort your section out, Sergeant. This is your problem. You need to sort it out. Well, I didn't have the skills or the capabilities to sort out what's going on with him, because there's something going on that I don't have the training for, that they didn't teach you on your trades courses or your senior or your leadership courses.
That's right. That's right.
And you're like, wow, okay. But I did recognize that he needed mental health help. I started to go on my own accord because I was like not doing well. I went to go see a psychologist. I was talking with her, and I started learning some techniques and stuff like that. And then the Tyrell started slipping, added the stress on my life. And then things with the wife were getting bad again. So it's like, raw. That healthy Derrick was broken. And then I started going back to my old coping mechanisms, which was drinking and gambling. You know, that's what I love to do. I just check the fuck out.
Yep.
Go drinking, go gambling. Perfect. Well, that is not a great way to cure yourself, as I found out. But it was effective because, you know, I didn't have to deal with my shit. It was just avoiding stuff. I remember when my psychologist told me that I got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was like, you're kidding me. I don't recognize that. I don't acknowledge that as a diagnosis. I didn't serve overseas. I don't have PTSD. I'm not like, and that made me feel even worse.
Right.
Because I had guilt and shame because I didn't fucking do anything.
Yeah.
You know, I was in the rear with the gear supporting the mission from home. Those guys are over there, you know, dying and putting their life in danger every day. And here I am because, you know, essentially, you know, I got trauma, like from sexual assault.
That's right.
So I denied it. I denied that. I'm like, nope, I'm fine. I'm good. You guys are wrong. And then all the stuff with the Tyrell thing, he kind of, you know, he was kind of unraveling at the same time I was unraveling. And, you know, he attempted suicide twice when he was in my section. The first time his buddy stopped him, like was with him all night. He took some medication. He took a lot of it. And talking to him later on, it was an attempt on his life. So I'm like, okay, we're going right to the MIR to get you some help, some mental health help. That's what they did. So they examined him. They realized that, you know, he wasn't in immediate danger. He was feeling sad and blue. In the meantime, I get a phone call from his mom saying that she just wants her baby boy home. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get him home for you. I promise you that. So I talked to the doctors and I convinced them, listen, he's going to be under his mother's care. He's going to report to me every day. I think he needs a break from the base. Send him home. He'll report to me. So I'm taking on more of my responsibilities, right? Like it's beyond my scope of work. Just, I'm going to do this because I cared for this kid. He's a really good kid. Like, you know, I hung out with him and stuff and, you know, drove him to boxing. We'd go get wings and we talk about life and see how he's doing. So I get a call from his mom. I convinced the doctors to release him to his mother for the weekend. And I'm going to drive him down to the boat in Digby. So driving him down, we give him the big motivational speech, tell him that I love him, I care for him, you're valued. Give him a few bucks for the boat to get something to eat and some water. And that he calls me every day. So that was a Friday. Saturday, he calls me up complaining that his mom's being mean to him. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, you scared her, so she's in charge, and we're on the same page at that time. Sunday comes, and I had a pretty stressful week at that point. So I left my work phone at home, went and helped my buddy do something, and by the time I got home, I had 53 missed phone calls. So I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? So it turns out he was in the hospital, attempted suicide again. I'm like, oh, okay, well, at least he's in the hospital. We're going to get him some help now. Wasn't really the case. Midnight comes and I get a phone call again, and it's his parents saying that they're bringing him back to me. This is Sunday night. I'm like, okay, I'll meet you in Truro. I'll meet you halfway, whatever. I'm hopping in the truck. I'm on no sleep. Called the sergeant major. I said, I'm fucking going right now. Are you coming? He's like, well, I got to ask. I said, I'm going without you if you're coming. So he hopped in, we end up picking Tyrell up, and I drive him all the way back to the base. And I'm pissed at this time. I'm like, oh, you really pulled one over on me. Really mad. And I had a mental health appointment the next day with my psychologist. Now I'm going to have to miss it because I'm so exhausted. We go to the hospital. It doesn't open till 7, so I'm sitting there waiting until it opens. Sit with him until he gets the help that he needs. Call up my psychologist, say, can't make it today. So I went home and I relaxed. And then actually Tyrell wound up sliding into my mental health appointment that I canceled on with the same psychologist that I seen. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to relax. I'm going to go and de-stress. I'm going to go down and grab a beer at the Top Hat down in Greenwood. So I go down and I just sit down. I have a beer sitting in front of me. And who comes walking in? I'm like, it's Tyrell. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You're in the hospital and then they let you out? Like, what the fuck is going on? At that point, I was just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So that was like maybe Monday, Tuesday, I sat on it. And then Wednesday morning, I decided I was going to quit the military. I said, this isn't for me anymore.
Wow.
They diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm putting out a resume. I'm fucking done. Whatever. So, like, I was a career guy. I loved the military. I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to go as far as I could. And I just, man, that was it. That was it for me. The TSN turning point right there was, I'm not cut out for this. I don't want to be a part of this. And I quit.
Wow.
On top of that, while I was quitting and all this stuff was going on with Tyrell, I wound up having a negative interaction with the military police again. And this is probably the one that did me in. Was I had went to the hospital to get some medication for the ringing in my ears, which tinnitus, and they prescribed me clonazepam, right? Benzodiazepine.
Yep.
And I'm like, and they're like, don't drink on it. Well, I'm a full-fledged alcoholic at this time. I could drink 30 beers and be like, oh, don't drink. Okay, I won't take them that day, and I won't drink. Right.
Right.
So
right.
I didn't take them that day, and we get a beer call for one of the guys that are retiring. He's a chief, and so you're a sergeant. You're expected to show up. I have a tasking to be on the next day to fly out to Iqaluit, and I wound up missing my plane because I wound up in the drunk tank after wrestling with the MPs in my dooryard. 4 of them. Yeah, that was pretty intense. I had no idea what I was doing. I went to the beer call. I had 6 beer, which were light beer, which was nothing for me at the time. And I was falling down drunk, like boom, boom. Somebody out of the graciousness of their heart decided to see me and drive me home. I'm in full uniform. Right? I get home. My wife's not too happy with me. She's got the door locked. I turn around. There's 4 MPs there. I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
So I sit down on my hands, and they're like, hey, what's going on? I said, nothing. I'm just trying to get in my house. I have a flight to catch. They asked me to stand up. And at that point, my fight or flight kicked in. I got a railing on one side, railing on the other side, locked door behind me, and 4 guys coming at me. And one guy grabs my wrist. At that point, it's fucking on. I'm like, let's go. And I really didn't fight. I just kind of resisted a lot and just made a real big fool of myself, screaming and crying and freaking out, right? And all the neighbors and the PMQs are, looky-loos and looking at you, and you're just really embarrassed. And they get me in the back of the car, and I go sleep it off in the cells, and the next day the fucking cell door opens, and it's the major and the sergeant major. I got no hat. And they're like, what happened? I'm like, no fucking idea, sir. And they're like, well, you're going to be on that plane tomorrow. Yes, sir. So went home, packed my shit, got on the plane to Iqaluit the next day, and just waited for the fucking shoe to drop, right? Like, holy fuck. Oh, man. It was a 2-week tasking up in Iqaluit, working on the arrestor gears, catching airplanes, and nothing. I didn't hear anything. I didn't know if they were going to charge me or what. So I get back, and all this Tyrell stuff goes on. My mental health's declining. I have this lemon over my head. I'm getting out. And then as soon as I put my release in, then that afternoon I got a phone call, and they said the chief wanted to see me. Went in, and they had charge papers for me. I'm like, oh, okay, I see how it is.
Yeah.
I quit. Now they're going to charge me.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give you your pound of flesh. I fucked up. But what I didn't realize that they were trying to get a 139, which is resisting an officer in his duty, which is like basically a criminal charge. I was like, oh. And then you have the 129, which was basically the catch-all for drunkenness. So summary trial, you go in, you're basically guilty if you select summary trial, and it's a lesser charge. A day before my daughter's birthday, I get my summary trial. I go up. I figured I'm going to plead guilty to the drunkenness, and I'd be on my way. I pay my fine and take my licks. Well, they found me guilty of the drunkenness, and then they found me guilty of the charge against the police officers, which is a criminal charge, and they were going to send me to jail for 3 weeks. And I was like, whoa, holy fuck. I'm like, wow, this is pretty serious. So what do I do? Like, I'm like panicking. I'm not in the right mind. I'm suffering pretty bad. And I just called a civilian lawyer. Within 2 weeks, he took care of it, and the charges went away. Basically, they found me guilty of both charges. They messed up. I got out on a technicality. Thank you. I learned my lesson. I'm still getting out. Everything's good to go. I don't have any criminal charges. And then a few weeks later, I get a message saying that they're going to go court-martial on me. And I was like, oh, here we go.
Wow.
Just to prove a point, right? Like, I'm like, okay, so you guys really want your pound of flesh because, when you make the entire chain of command look poorly and, military justice or the other, in the eyes of their peers or their colleagues, you had me dead to rights. I fucked up and I still got off. So it doesn't look good for the colonel. So the colonel's pissed. He's pissed at the chief. The chief's pissed at the sergeant major, and the sergeant major's pissed off at me. Right. So the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I have to get out. So I'm like, okay, I'm definitely getting out now. Got out with my diagnosis. Figured, I applied to Veteran Affairs after I got out to get covered for post-traumatic stress disorder. And in the meantime, I went to go work for Cummins out in Winnipeg as a power generation technician. I could use my skills that I learned in the military to, make money out in Winnipeg. So quit the military, moved out to Winnipeg with my wife that we're still having problems with, and started a new job because I was going to make more money and that was going to fix everything. Well, it didn't. It really didn't. It just kind of like gave me an outlet to lean more into my coping mechanisms, which is gambling and drinking and women and distracting myself. And I worked a lot because I love to work, because I love making money. I think I worked 1,500 hours of overtime one year just because I could.
Shit.
And it was just like, go, go, go. And there was times when I was on the road that I would come back and I would just go get a hotel room and just fucking be in the cities just so I could relax and not go home to my family and drink my face off, man, and just do whatever. And that was all fine and dandy. And at this time, I stopped going to the gym. I stopped taking care of myself. I was eating like shit. I wanted to kill whatever image I had of myself of me in the military, because that wasn't me anymore. So when I left the military in 2015, took the civilian job, I was making money and everything was good. I had the house, I'm married, but, it was kind of more of an agreement. It wasn't really a marriage, whatever. I'll go provide for my family because that's what a good man does and live the life I want to live. And then 2018, I was working on a generator and I fell and I injured my shoulder and I couldn't work anymore.
Oh, shit.
So now I got to sit home, right? Like I'm already 320 pounds at this point, just not feeling well. And 8 months of not doing anything from June, actually probably 6 months, from June 2018 to January 2019, I was off work. And I sat in the basement feeling sorry for myself. My life was falling apart. Like, my wife, I separated from my wife, on the verge of bankruptcy, right? Filing for divorce, and all these things started piling on. And I didn't know how to cope with them. So I just drank more and, lost my job and feeling sorry for myself and sitting in the basement of this place that I was renting. And my daughter would come over and she'd look at me and just, you could see the hurt in her eyes. Like, Dad, you're better than this. Like, wow, you really let yourself go. Like, oh man. So I'd see that and it really hurt. And I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. And I was like, wow, what happened? And then I was down in the basement and I was watching Joe Rogan on YouTube, and David Goggins was on there. And fuck, I love his story, man. And he was a big guy and he dropped all this weight in a short amount of time, and he became like this ultra marathon runner and just a a badass, and talking about his callous mind and hardening up. And I'm like, okay. And then he says, no one's coming to fucking save you. Save yourself. And I was like, holy, no one is coming to save me.
That's true.
I've been waiting for people coming down, the SWAT team to bust in. Here, we're here to save you, Derrick.
Yep.
Fucking, you're fucked.
Yep.
Well,
right.
no,
That's true.
nobody came.
Nope.
He's like, save yourself. So I got down. I started doing burpees at 400 pounds right there, and I videotaped it. And I was like, at that point, I made a decision. I'm like, you know what? Everything else that's going off in my fucking life, like, is in chaos. I avoided all these things. What can I change? Well, I can get my health back. And I started walking, started doing little things at a time, made slow improvements. And then I started handling my, my finances, and then, filing my taxes and all the stuff that just seemed so great to do that I couldn't do because I was traumatized.
Absolutely.
I go to my psychologist, and at this time, VAC has denied me benefits for post-traumatic stress disorder because it was from my childhood. I told my story about the prank, as I called it at the time, when I went up to the review board. They said, nope, you made it up. We don't believe you.
Oh, my fuck.
I was like, wow, okay. So I guess I don't have that was like verification for me that I don't have post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Like, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
no.
I did. Yeah, I did. So I'm sitting there, I'm talking to my psychologist, and she's like, well, tell me how you feel about being raped. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
She's like, what happened in 2001 when those guys did that stuff to you? How do you feel about being raped? I'm like, I was in denial of it. And I'm like, what? So I had to process that. And it was only at that point I accepted what it actually was. And I was like, oh man, that sucks.
Yeah.
That really, for a man to have that happen to him, it's pretty demoralizing. And what I find interesting now is the more I share my story about this, and the women that have come forward about it, and sexual misconduct in the military, I tell my story and they look at me like, oh, poor you, when that happened to them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they feel like it's more grave for me because I'm a man. It's messed up all around. It does happen. It does happen to men.
Yep, it does.
And I just wanted to get healthy, and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know at that point. I know that I had to get my room in order and make my bed and try to clear up the things I could and let all the other things come as they are and not try to get upset about them. But that's a lot of work. That's a lot of effort. And that's the big thing about recovery is like unpacking all the stuff and organizing it and keeping what you need and getting rid of what you don't, and then defining what type of man you want to be or what type of person you want to be. A man of integrity. Well, you want to be a good man. Well, you already have a definition of a good man. We established that. A good man provides. Well, there's got to be more to that.
Yeah.
So let's get into there. A good man. What does a good man want? What do I need? It was love that I needed, and I wasn't loving myself. Like, I really, really hated myself. I don't think I ever did love myself. I valued other people's opinion of me more than my own opinion. But I would give you the shirt off my back. And if I loved you, I really loved you. Like, just like, oh. But I couldn't show myself the same love. But I had some pretty amazing people in my life show me the love that I couldn't show myself. And they were super patient with me. And, some people got hurt and other people got hurt and stuck beside me. And fast forward to 2020, I was starting to get my health back. I was going to the gym regularly. And then the pandemic hit. Everything's going great. And then I'm like, oh, now I don't have the gym. Where's my outlet? I'm like, well, I can go to work still. So I'm still working at the time. And so I leaned into that and just trying not to eat like crap, not drink. And I did well, And eventually, in September 2020, Veteran Affairs came back and said that I was approved for the rehab program finally, after
Awesome.
like a bunch of years of waiting. I'm like, oh, now I can work on myself. So I stopped working in 2020, and the first thing I wanted to do was celebrate. I was like, wow, I should go get some beer. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I shouldn't.
No.
No, I shouldn't.
Good
So
man. Good man.
it didn't serve any purpose for me. So I'm like, now the pandemic's in full swing here, right? And I can't go anywhere. I'm in Winnipeg. I'm not working. I'm sitting at home. And I was in another relationship at the time because I needed to fill that need of love that I couldn't show myself. And it just wasn't fulfilling to me. And, you know, I really thought I loved this person, but really it was just a distraction for me. And, you know, you get that gut feeling of like, oh, this isn't right.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what, I'm moving back home in 2021, and I bought a place here in New Brunswick. But in the meantime, I had to wait, 4 months in isolation by myself until I could move. And I was like, all right, I better like really buckle into my coping mechanisms, my healthy ones, to try and get through this. Like the gym wasn't open. You know, I'd exercise at home, try to be mindful and stuff, but it was tough, man. I sat there and I packed shit that I didn't want to think about, and journaled and drew and sketched and stuff like that, and played music, and it was a roller coaster of emotions. And I was unstable when I got back after going through all the trauma, the divorce, and everything that was put behind me. That chapter of my life is closed. I'm going home. I have that to look forward to. So I moved back to St. John area in March of 2021. And after coming through the pandemic, mostly isolated, I had a hard time reintegrating with people, like talking to people, going out, saying hello.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
it really freaked me out.
Yeah.
So it was like, what do I do? Well, I went back to some of my old coping mechanisms, right? Distractions, drinking, right? I can do whatever I want now. I'm alone and I'm not hurting anybody but myself.
Right.
I really had a hard time. And then when I was in isolation and COVID, I decided what I wanted to do. When I came back to St. John, I wanted to get involved in the community. I wanted to do charity work. You know, I wanted to get healthy, and I didn't know how to do that. So come June of 2021, I'm sitting around bored, and I really having a hard time with alcohol at this point, because it went from one day to every other day to pretty much every day at that point. And I'm like, I just gotta stop. So I found out about this fella, John Wood, up in Oromocto, who has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and started the John Wood Foundation. And me being impulsive with all my impulsiveness, I decided to do a fundraiser for him. So at this point, I'm like 330 pounds, going to the gym, very strong guy, but my cardio was shit. So I went for a quick 5K walk, came back, and I'm like, you know what? I think I can do 500 miles. So the next day, I slept on it, and then the next day, I asked my friend at the gym. I said, "Hey, do you think I could do walk 500 miles?" He's like, "Yeah, of course." So I went out in my truck and I made a video. Said I was going to walk 500 miles to raise awareness and funds for the John Wood Foundation in the summer of 2021.
Holy shit!
So it was awesome, man. I went out and it was like I started using the internet. I created this character of Big D, like that I could project to everybody out there to raise awareness for this foundation, and I could do my suffering while I was done. You know, I could go out and walk and get exercise and raise awareness for this foundation. And it was a success. It blew up. It was pretty cool. The community welcomed me. I was a bit famous, I guess, in the area up in Oromocto as well.
Yep.
It was great. People came together. Donations were rolling in, and I raised about $10,000 the first year just from walking.
Damn.
For this. It was cool. I was like, yes. And it was a way for me to take that impulsiveness and channel my energy into something positive. And I did it. And I had no fucking clue how I did it to this day, but I went out and did it, and it was amazing. And people came together, and I was on CBC and CTV morning news getting interviewed, which was like surreal. And I was like, okay. And then I was done. And then the loneliness crept in.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, what do I do now? So I go back to drinking and gambling. And I'm like, fuck, here I am again. And then, last year I did a follow-up. My heart wasn't really in it. The first one was called the Somerville 500 fundraiser. So 500 miles around Somerville, New Brunswick. And this one was the John Wood Foundation 6-1 tour, 621 miles or 1,000 kilometers. I did that on a bike, and I could do it more. I didn't have to do it every day. I didn't have to go walking every day. I could go for a 60K bike ride every other day and still raise awareness and funds, but I'm not killing myself. So that was pretty successful. Raised about another $4,000 for the foundation. And then I'm like, felt empty again. So here I go. I'm like, well, what do I do? I had to take a step back and realize who I was hanging out with and what type of man do I want to be. And the only way I could figure that out was alone, by myself, and then start creating a whole new group of a whole new tribe and trying to find the right type of people that are in sync where I want to be. Like, I know I don't want to do those other things to cope, and I want to be healthy, but you can't be healthy if you're hanging around with people that do those things. So find some people that are where you want to be and start hanging out with them. And, within the last year, I really put the work in. I met some amazing people who turned me on to different areas of recovery, like more of in line with the universe thinking, like everything's going to be, life is what it is. It's how you respond to it. And that was the big thing I got out of it. This one book that I read was The Universe Has Got Your Back. And this has helped me immensely. And it's all about being present and not worrying about the past. And the future is going to come. And if you just accept things as they come, you're going to get a lot further. So I just started living like that. And I got in line with, first off is the guys from Operation Feed St. John, Pat Gordon. I met him. I've known Pat for 20 years. He used to work at the convenience store in front of my parents' house. And I met him prior to him getting in the military. And he did his stuff, and I love what he was doing with his charity, and I want to get involved with that. So I joined Operation Feed St. John. That held me accountable for the drinking, where I don't need to drink because these guys don't drink. So anytime I felt like drinking, I'd call Pat up and say, hey, Pat, tell me why I should drink today. And he'd start laughing, and then we'd talk it out. So today I have over 6 months sober, not a drop of booze.
Congratulations, man. Congrats. Yeah.
Thanks. It was pretty.
Jesus.
It was one of those things. It was even social beers that were bringing me back to my old ways too. So recognize that I don't feel good with the booze. And then another big place that helped me out was Simply for Life here in St. John. They're a nutritional company, and Bruce Sweeney and his wife Claudine really have taken a shine to me. They saw what I was doing with the John Wood Foundation, and really brought me into their circle and taught me about nutrition. We meet at we have a boys club, a Saturday morning boys club, where a bunch of guys get together, we work out, and we go eat, and we talk about life. And, that's building your tribe. And I didn't realize the importance of doing that. I always thought everybody else out there was against me.
Yeah.
But you just need to find the right people. That's what it comes down to. You can find people that serve that aren't in the same wavelength as you, that they're on their own healing journey. They might not necessarily be this. You guys have stuff in common. They might not necessarily be the best for your healing. So you got to recognize that, and then step towards the people that are doing the things that you want to be doing. So, Simply for Life, they do my nutrition for me. And I tell you, I used to have those days where I would cycle from high to low to high to low to high to low. I did that 6 times in one day.
Wow.
And I was like exhausted. And I was telling Bruce about this, and he's like, okay, I'm going to help you out. And he gave me a sleep protocol. At that time, I was sleeping probably 3 hours a night. He just did some simple changes, like delaying my coffee in the morning, eating some blueberries at night. And I went from 3 hours to 6 hours. I said, okay, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about. And then he's like, I think you're a really great guy, Derrick, and I want to help you get where you want to go. I'm going to offer you coaching, nutritional coaching for free. All you have to do is be honest about it. So that's what I've been doing. And, I had fantastic results with these guys. I've lost 40 pounds from fat alone, just from changing. It's amazing. Like My physical transformation is great, but I really wish people could like see the changes in my brain and how happy I am now compared to where I was 4 years ago or even last year. It's night and day, and it's really it's amazing what you can do. And it helped me so much in my healing process that I feel like I am at my end of it. Like I'm not in it anymore. I did all the work I had to do, and now I finally live the life that I've always wanted, that I created by holding myself accountable, defining what type of person I wanted to be, surrounding myself with the right type of people, and filling my soul with things like working with Operation Feed, where we deliver food to the kids in the community, where we help veterans and first responders heal from trauma. We do peer-to-peer support and all those great things. And I'm like, yes, that's how I can help without giving too much of myself. So, I mean, you got to find that balance and really learn how to love yourself to heal. Because if you don't love yourself, no one else will.
Absolutely,
So,
brother. Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, Derrick. And when we come back, we're going to talk about processing some of those memories and your post-traumatic growth, because that's a huge thing that's happened to you. Take a quick break.
This episode of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast is brought to you thanks to the support and financial sponsorship of Cracked Armor. Go to crackedarmor.com, read the story, buy the gear, wear it, to send a message to others who are struggling that they're not alone.
Also, check out Willow Tree Farm, care of Jason Subkowicz, another member who is struggling with PTSD and who frequently updates his Instagram to share his story. You can follow him at jason.subkowicz. That's jason.Sierra Oscar Bravo Kilo Oscar Whiskey India Charlie Zulu.
And we are back from the break. Thanks for staying tuned to the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. Talking with Derrick May, who is a Canadian Air Forces member, retired from the forces, and now working, well, I should say volunteering, with Operation Feed St. John. Derrick, just to go back, because to start, I thank you very much for sharing that story, sharing your journey, and trusting enough to do so, because I completely understand that it can make a person feel quite vulnerable when you talk about things from your childhood, and when you talk about things like sexual assault, whether they want to call it a prank or not. I tend to say that's not what it was, but that makes you very vulnerable. I just want to take the time to say thank you very much for sharing, Derrick.
I appreciate the platform to get this out. I carried this with me for 20 plus years, and this is a part of my healing process, that it is no longer mine. I'm putting it out to the world so I don't have to carry it anymore. So thank you, Larry, for giving us a platform to do this.
Man, it's awesome. I'm only too happy to do so, Derrick. When other people are listening to this and they're going to bring up some memories of some childhood traumas that happened to them, what have you done to try to process some of those things? Because, I mean, obviously the age you were at, you could not possibly process it. Have you revisited those thoughts, Derrick? Have you worked with a psychologist, with peer support, whatever, to try and reconcile that childhood trauma?
Yeah, I've been in therapy with my psychologist intensively for the last 2 years since I moved home. And we just recently, last September, we made that breakthrough of the childhood trauma and getting in there and really unpacking it. And how could I not feel the way that I felt? I had no choice in the matter. I accept the fact that I had no power in it. So I shouldn't feel guilty about it. It was happened to me. It's no longer mine. The other people should feel guilty about it. And it was really weird when I came back home. I rented a place, just willy-nilly, Kennebecasis River, just to isolate for the 2 weeks during the COVID period. And I get out and I'm looking around, and I look down the beach, and it was a place where I actually was assaulted at when I was a kid and molested when I was a kid. I was like,
holy shit.
Wow. So I'm call my psychologist up. I said, you're not going to believe this. And so I'm sitting there and I'm staring at it. I'm like, it's bringing a lot of memories and stuff like that back. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not giving this power. So I decided to go back to the places where I was molested and sit there
Wow.
and own it and be like, this isn't scary anymore. Like Rockwood Park, There's a place that had happened in St. John. It was one of my favorite places. I go there every day. I walk through it. I'm taking it back because that one moment in time is not going to prevent me from going to the places I want to go.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so it's just stuff like that, and getting healthy, eating right, staying active, getting out in the community, and finding like-minded individuals that when you can be vulnerable, they're not going to hold it against you, because that's a shitty thing to do. Like, if you're vulnerable with somebody and they're going to use it as ammunition to try to control and manipulate you. But no, you find that right type of people, and they're out there, and I think it's growing now more and more. And the more we talk about it, the more it's going to grow.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, you talk about the development of a tribe and having the right people around you, and I couldn't agree more. It's an absolutely imperative reality that you need to build a proper group, a proper tribe. Otherwise, it's pretty hard to stay afloat, to not sink again back into, those dark waters of gambling, drinking, eating poorly, not working out, going down to that shitty headspace again that just drags you back. I mean, it's phenomenal that you've been able to commit to that and stick with that and been sober now for the last 6 months. With regards to building the tribe, I will definitely share with everyone that Derrick was one of the people who reached out to me when I was having a bad day a few weeks ago after the OPP shootings just outside of Rockland, Ontario. And Derrick reached out just to make sure I was okay. I mentioned I was having a beer just to sort of go, hey, kind of be careful what you're doing. Watch what you're doing, just really watching my six. And I just want to say thanks, man. I really appreciated that, Derrick.
I got your six, Larry. You know that. And I know you appreciate it because that's what I needed at that time. And I just asked myself, what would I need? And just someone to say hello. That's as simple as it could be. You don't need to give advice. You can just say, hey, man, I see what you're doing there. You might want to lean into something more healthy. And that's all it takes.
Yep. You're right.
And that's lobbing in the love. You don't need to be over aggressive with it. You can just lob it in. Or sometimes you can just sit back and listen.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not complicated, but it is complicated. And I think once you want to heal, you just need to get out of your own way, kill your ego, and just accept the fact, accept yourself. This is what it is, because life is never wrong. It just is, right? Yeah. And we just move forward. So what are you going to do in that time? We can stew in it, or we can bring the fight to it. You may not have anything left, but you do. I guarantee it. I've been there, and you do.
I like the fact, too, you bring up, you need to just drop the ego, because let's be honest. I mean, the fucking ego, it becomes a killer. It really does. You live for that. You push onward for the wrong reasons, and you don't realize, although you are pushing onward in an unhealthy manner and going in the wrong direction than you should be, primarily because of that ego, that inability to make yourself vulnerable, to feel things that you don't want to feel, to experience things you don't want to experience, and to try to always have the upper hand on something that you really never grasp until you actually drop the fucking ego. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And it's a hard thing to let go, because you are you. Your brain is you. Your brain lies to you. I don't know if you know that, but your brain tells you lies every second of the day. And it's how you respond to that. And this is how I got over it. Really, our ego is judgments of other people and stuff like that. So it's a judgment thing. And this is one thing that I practice. Every time I made a judgment of somebody, good or bad, I noted it in my head. And I'm like, I accept people for who they are. I was judging a lot of people and I didn't realize it. And I'm like, wow. So those judgments were just a reflection of my insecurities. So then I had to dive into that. Why does that make me insecure? So as soon as I started seeing the stuff in myself, I could accept other people for who they are at their level. You know what I mean? So I had to do that deep work, and you kill that ego, and that's the gatekeeper. And once you kill that, you can unpack a lot of stuff. But hey, you're not perfect. And I hate to tell it, nobody is, So just accept it. And we're all trying to heal here, and we want you to do the best.
Absolutely, man. And I'm just going back through the conversation about your journey and just thinking about the things that you've had to endure. And I mean, as much as, your choices of coping were not the healthiest, I'm very happy that at least you found a way to cope and move through, because, again, dealing with the childhood sexual abuse, trying to find your way, then all of a sudden having an incident happen in what ought to have been a safe place with your brothers becomes not, and drags you right back down to a darkness that you likely hadn't accessed in a long time. And it just starts spiraling out of there, brother. And I mean, you are a true survivor. To be able to, continue, I'm getting off this, but you fall back in. Okay, what now? You fall back in. Okay, what now? To where you're at a point that I can safely say I believe you have amazingly seen post-traumatic growth. You are a person that you wanted to be. You're a person now who can look at yourself in the mirror, who can see the positives, who can love yourself, who does realize no one else is coming. You need to pick yourself up, who is thriving, being able to give back to the community, because ultimately, Derrick, I mean, you joined because you wanted to serve, and you're back to doing that. You're back to doing it in a sober way. You're back to doing it in a better way for you, for others. And I mean, there's a huge growth in that. So from there, Derrick, I guess what I'm asking is, what would you recommend to other people with regards to attaining their post-traumatic growth? A lot of people really see the diagnosis as a complete and utter life sentence. However, there can be growth after this. There can be improvements, even improvements to who you were before your trauma. So,
Right.
How would you recommend, what would you say to people to try to achieve that growth?
You just need to accept yourself. Accept it. All the good, all the bad, it's you. Accept those things. Now, they are just things. And then you got to unpack it. What is good? What is bad? Or is it just is? Define who you are as a person and love those things that you think are unlovable about yourself. And it's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable with people and let people know and talk about it, because you don't need to suffer alone. And that's helped me immensely, is talking about stuff, and the response that I get, it's not what you think in your head. You're not going to be shunned and being shamed. If you get the right people in your corner, they're going to accept you and not judge you. And that's what it comes down to. Love yourself, because nobody else is going to until you do.
And I agree, that need to be able to talk, and that fear of, like, fucking trolls, like just assholes or that are gonna all of a sudden speak ill of you, that you're weak, that what the fuck, pick yourself up, move on, what's wrong with you, oh my fuck, get over it, be a man. Fuck off. Like, fuck right off, right? I mean, it's horseshit.
It is horseshit, and that's the ego of those guys, right? And they, just because they can't get vulnerable, tell you what, man, like, you think I'm weak? Let's go to the gym. You know what I mean? Let's go deadlift.
Let's do that. Let's do it. Right. Exactly.
Right.
And Derrick, I mean, that was a big reason that I believe that I stayed in, kind of hiding from my diagnosis, or putting that fucking mask on when I'm outside of my safe area, my home, and being someone else all the time, was because I didn't want people to know. And a big reason I didn't want people to know was because I was embarrassed, because I felt shame, because I felt guilt, because I felt fucking weak, that I felt that I was going to get shit on. And that was a big thing with even doing this podcast, was I have no fucking desire. I had zero desire for any peer support groups, sitting down, talking to people, because all I thought it was going to be was, well, if that got you, wait till you hear mine. Oh, well, you think that's all that happened to you? Well, fuck. And it's been the exact opposite. So it was a huge learning thing for me as well. And this is why I try to say, hey, fucking be part of a peer group, talk, and people who are listening to the podcast. I mean, that's essentially what this is a big fucking peer group every week where you hear different people talking. And Derrick, you're part of one right now in St. John. Tell us about that.
So we have 2 peer-to-peer supports here in St. John. Actually, there's one in Kennebec Cases Quispam area, and there's one in St. John that is a part of Operation Feed. We facilitate it through a space that is donated by 2 psychologists that we have. Laura Tan is one in St. John, and then we have KV Psychology that offers another space for us out there. It's been growing steadily. Dave Grady, who's the guy that is a part of Operation Feed, he was running this peer group, and he hooked up with Pat. And next thing you know, we're growing this thing. When it started out with 3 people, 1 week we had 10 people at one group and 10 people at the other group. So it's just growing exponentially. And there's a need for it. And we go down and we shoot the shit. We don't talk about trauma. We just ask, how was your week? Have you had any challenges? How did you get through it? How did you move past it? And this is where we're going. We need to be able to have access to more mental health services. And we don't need to have someone that hasn't been through it telling us how to get through it. And it's very cathartic. Like you met, I believe you met Kirk Westfield down at in Halifax.
I did. Yep.
And he's a great guy.
Great
I met
guy.
him through peer-to-peer support. And, I love his energy and where he's at in his journey. And I see the hope in his eyes when he comes to the group. And it really picks people up. And I really love this peer-to-peer support. And I was against it as well. But actually tonight, after I get off this podcast, I'm heading out to KV. I'll be heading the group up, and we'll be talking about our feelings and stuff like that. And, that's not weak at all.
Not at all, man. That's a fucking mic drop right there. I'm literally right after this podcast going and leading a group. That's fantastic, Derrick. Listen, man, I'm not going to blow sunshine. I ain't fucking doing that. But
no,
you've come a long way, my friend. You really have come a long way. And you oftentimes chose the difficult path. And I'm guilty of the exact same thing, brother. But I really love the fact that you never quit, that you never gave up on yourself. As much as times seemed you did, you ultimately didn't. You stayed in the fight, no matter what it took. Some coping sometimes that wasn't great, but still, you stayed in the fight to where you are now. And yeah, you've really are going to resonate with a lot of people, Derrick. They're going to just see this as quite inspirational, that there is a chance out there despite how many shitty things have happened in their lives. Brother, before we end off, is there anything else that you would like to say? Anything you want to add? The floor is yours.
Well, if you guys want to support Operation Feed, you can head over to Operation Feed St. John or ofsj.ca. That's our nonprofit organization where we help feed the bellies of the most vulnerable and feed the mind, bodies, and souls of veterans and first responders. And it's a group that I'm passionate about and helps me in my recovery. And if you want to follow my personal journey, you can check me out on Instagram at the Derrick May Project. On Instagram, you can see my weight loss journey. I came from 400 pounds and 50% body fat, and today I'm sitting around 289 and 25%. So come a long way, and it's been really cathartic for me. So I hope to see you guys there.
That's fantastic, man. Fantastic. And I'll end off with, go follow Derrick. I mean, look at the Derrick May Project, and you'll be able to see firsthand exactly what this man has been able to do with himself, how he's able to transform himself, where he was at difficult times to where he is now. You can hear in his voice the acceptance of the traumas that's happened, but also that it will not continue to rule him. It will not decide what will happen to him in the future or today. Derrick says, you leave the past in the past. The future is going to happen. Just accept that it will. Live today. Love yourself. Open up. Talk. Respect. And just breathe. Be good to yourself. My name is Larry Payton. I have your 6. Please have mine.
Don't go away. There's so much left to do, so many things I wanna say, and I sing, hey, don't make the change. If it rains every single day, I'll fight to blow it all away.